You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 31 on Being Human with Lisa Diane McCall. Meet Lisa Diane McCall from Explore the Dark Heart, who I met at the Baltimore Book Festival this past spring. She's the author of The Rhythm of the Soul, A Journey of Loss and Discovery, and also a life coach. A zoologist by training, she finds nature fascinating, along with people and culture. A researcher in the international public health space, she loves observing people and using her skills as she directs a clinical study on HIV and hepatitis C. She talks about her work at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and what she has learned from the patients over the past 15 years. Lisa also talks about her vision quest in Utah and the Sahara Desert and the personal growth work that she has done in her life. She explains what's involved with the steps of vision questing to include separation, sacred, where you're reflecting in nature, and then incorporating or taking back to your community what you've shifted as you've done your vision quest. She talks about the importance of the process you use when you re-enter the world after your energy has shifted within you. Lisa's mystical realism book showcases the Tuareg culture, the history of the war in Algeria, and life in the desert. Always a researcher, she undertook deep study of the people, their stories, and the land in order to write the book and bring greater awareness of these people to the world. We talk about self-sabotage and how the inner critic influences us. She talks about voice dialogue coaching to build your awareness around your behaviors, such as people-pleasing and the impact it has on your results. As a trained life coach, Lisa works with her clients to shift their awareness and behaviors from these default actions. You can learn more of the shadow work she does with her clients. I hope you enjoy hearing Lisa's wisdom as much as I did when we chatted. So let's go. Welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Today, I have Lisa Diane McCall, who is a health researcher, certified life coach, and author with me. And we're going to be talking today about her journey as a brave girl, as well as her work in the public health sector, as well as her book that came out last year, The Rhythm of the Soul, A Journey of Loss and Discovery. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you and I met at a book festival where we were in the tent with all the other local authors that were promoting our books. And, I just instantly connected with you and I found your book just very fascinating. I have bought it and I'm starting to read it. And so tell me a little bit about your backstory. And, it looks like you've been spending a lot of time in the public health sector, and now you're pursuing some of your soul's calling as an author and a life coach.
Yeah, well, it started off really in the realm of biology. So my undergraduate is in zoology, studies of zoology and animal behavior, which I feel like has come from that place of being observational. I've always observed all my life, probably an introvert that likes to be, observing. And nature was one of the first places that I really found myself being fascinated by, but along the way, also fascination of people and cultures and those, how we all in this world operate. And so part of what I would have liked to have done was go into anthropology, but anthropology is one of those very large, if you get a PhD or if you go into something like that, it's a kind of a nebulous route to take. And what happened was I was already in the public health world doing, as a researcher, doing in lab work. And the idea of the public health doing something that's an international health focus. International health basically is utilizing those qualitative observations. So that's how I kind of went into that realm of public health. It was partly because I was already as a researcher, being in the lab aspect of it, and then wanting to go someplace that was not lab or biology oriented, but sort of taking me into that more observational human realm. So that's why I have a master's of health science in international health. So that's kind of the route that I've taken.
Right, right. And then, you're at one of the most prestigious places of all, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And it looks like the last decade or so, you've been leading a study.
Yeah, so in the last 15 years, I'm directing a study that's looking at, it's in a clinic. We have a clinic where people come in to do an epidemiology study looking at HIV and hepatitis C in people who have a history of injection drug use. So this actual study has been going on for over 30 years. So it's been a real landmark study, and in terms of its longevity, with thousands of participants who have been able to gather data to get through all kinds of questions, analyses of what they're going on in their behavioral aspects, their medical, their risk behavior, so we piece a lot, and they're aging, because now they're aging, and so we do aging parameters. So there's a lot of data points that are gathered by scheduling these people to come into our clinic, and they're scheduled to come every 6 months and do questionnaires and blood draws and a lot of different, like a battery of tests, functional assessments to find out how stable they are in their robustness of their being able to balance and have strength in the grip of their hand, and being able to stand up and down without using their arms. So there's also aging component to it as well. So that's been something I've been leading for the past 15 years, and it's been such an educational, such a deeply touching experience, because I am able to talk with people who are in this history of injection drug use. And we have people who are so currently entrenched in it. We have people who have happily not been injecting for a number of years. And it's just a really sobering and also exhilarating exchange that I am able to hear these stories and really connect with people. So it's been quite an intense experience over these 15 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, one of the things that you had mentioned to me that you had done, which I was like, "Oh, tell me more," and I want you to talk about on the show today, is Vision Quest, and what is a Vision Quest, and what led you to do a Vision Quest, and where did you go, and how did just tell me everything about Vision Questing.
Okay, well, Vision Questing came to me after I had already done some sort of personal growth workshops, things that you go to and kind of become a little bit more familiar with how to understand yourself. And I was doing that in a place where, you go to a room or, a facility where you do that with somebody. And I suddenly saw an ad that was about this Vision Quest experience. And it was about being outside. It was about being in the wilderness. It was about being in nature. And it seemed like the next thing was to just let go of four walls, let go of the structure in which I was doing this sort of personal growth and sinking deeper into understanding myself, and throw it out into a very, the entire nature setting, largesse of the nature setting. So my first Vision Quest was in 2002 in Utah, in the Canyonlands of Utah. So I will say that the landmark, or the hallmark of a Vision Quest is, after you sort of go through days of being led by very wise guides and kind of being in the group, you are then going off to sit for 3 days and nights while fasting. You have water, but you are really basically not eating food in those nights, and you actually start the fast. It's 4 days, because before you actually go to a solo spot, you start fasting the morning before that. So it really just puts you into this different rhythm of yourself, because you're not in that, oh, I'm going to eat now, and now I'm going to go here, and now I'm going to there. It's really, and that's how I have my book set up as there are three kind of steps of Vision Questing. And once you get to that place of severance, so the first is severance. You're severing from your everyday function, plugged in, responsible life. You're separating, you separate from that. And as you go through these things to sort of get more and more bravely into yourself, then there's a threshold that you cross. And that threshold takes you into sort of a place of this place of sacred. And that is you in relation to nature and the reflection of nature of you, because your inner nature is really being reflected in that outer nature. And what you see and what comes to you and, what catches your attention is oftentimes what's inside of you, that soulful part of you trying to give you the understanding of where you are, what you need, the wisdom. You're tapping deeper into that wisdom. So it just sort of you're unlayering so that you can get more in tune with where you are at that most moment. I mean, the idea of vision questing is there's something that wants you to be who you are. So you're sort of visioning who is that you as you're in this very open and pure place of just being. You have to sit with yourself. You actually have to sit with yourself, and you don't have the distractions of technology. You're not necessarily sitting there reading. That's not the point. You become fascinated with nature. One of the things the people who do this suggest for your solo time is to do a death lodge. And I've just done a sort of a little blog about doing a death lodge. Where in your solo spot feels like I say it's a good place to lie down and die, imagining yourself taking your last breath. Who comes? Who are the people who present? What would you want to say and have, an exchange? What would that exchange be like? What comes up? And it gives you a chance to be in a very raw moment that most of us shun, don't want to think about, don't want to talk about, and it only comes, you're pushed to it when usually a loved one is at that place and you're feeling uncomfortable because I don't know what to do with this death thing. I don't know how to. So, when you get into a deeper relationship of death in yourself, that then allows you to be less fearful and have a greater understanding of how you interact with people in their place of grief, in their place of, I'm now trained hospice volunteer. So I've just done that.
Yeah. I think hospice workers are angels.
It's a tough job. And actually this month I'll be training to be a doula, an end of life doula, a death doula. So that's another layer of it that I'll be training in. And I think doing these really deep inward and challenging places of doing something like a death lodge or sitting in the middle. I mean, the other two I did, I've done 3 vision quests altogether. The other 2 were done in the Sahara Desert. So again, it was the same thing where you're sitting 3 days and nights and not having the distractions of life, except the life that you're sitting in and the nature that you're sitting in at that moment. So the other thing, the last piece of when you've gone to that threshold, you have sat in, who am I in this really open, sacred place of self in nature? You want to take back, because there is something that inextricably is going to shift you in that moment, in those moments, right? You may not even quite understand it, but you have shifted. There's a sort of bodily as well as soulful as well as mindful shift that happens in those days, and it's usually something that raises your awareness or gives you something that you want to take back to your community. You want to have incorporation, where you're incorporating, how do I incorporate that me in that place that was so sacred and so removed, in a way so that I'm taking those gifts back to my community where I live. How can I share this deeper wisdom that I've come to? So it's really important to have incorporation and take that back to the community.
Is there a period of time after you've completed your vision quest that, in order to integrate back into the world, because you've changed, is there like you don't want to immediately go back to the go, right? So you want to allow yourself, after you've done your vision quest work, even more time to reacclimate.
And that's part of what you're doing while you're going through the vision quest itself, because you have to take time to gradually reconnect with the energy, because the energy is so different. You don't know how long a day is until you're sitting that many days on your own. And so you have to sort of get back into, it's like, right, you're gearing, that cranking that gear again, so that you're back into the rhythm of not the soul of you in that place, but the soul of you now amongst all the other souls and all the other energy that's going on. So the guides are definitely doing that with you as you're coming out. You share your story. Everyone gets to share their story. And you get this very strong mirroring from the guides, because they're hearing you in a way that they can then take your story and then make it even more potent for you. So as you're coming out, you're doing that work of gradually connecting. And you're gradually then, once you get back, I will absolutely say there's a pre-vision quest to me and a post-vision quest to me. And when I did my first vision quest, when I went back to my work setting at that time, I'll never forget I was standing and talking with people, probably telling them about my experience. And one of the supervisors came and he did a double say, oh, I didn't know that was you. You look different, So it really is palpable. The cells of your body are different. You haven't changed your look, but there's something, you're a different, kind of energetic.
Yeah, your aura is probably different.
Right. Yeah. So that was very striking that time.
Yeah. So having done 2 vision quests in the Sahara Desert, did that inspire,
absolutely,
inform your book? Okay.
Absolutely.
So talk about your book and kind of, as you've put this work out into the world, who you're hoping that it will touch, or, the impact that you're hoping to have. And, because I've got to believe that you were talking about, having raised your awareness, now you've got this deeper wisdom. Is this you sharing your wisdom as a result of these vision quests?
I would absolutely say, yeah, that's a good way. That's, sometimes you don't know what you're doing until, like you described that. Yeah. You know what? That's exactly a very good description of where this came from and what I wanted to share. It was a long process writing this. I was trying I didn't want to do memoir, because I feel like it would have just been too literal. I wanted something and I love magical realism. I love the style of magical realism. So because I'm so drawn to that genre, I wanted to sort of, see if I could, create this story that, because the desert is such a magical place, there is such a different sense of time. The Tuareg nomads are so in tune and aware in that environment that they are having to. It's such a sparse environment. How do you operate and how do you survive in such a sparse environment? They're so aware. Their radars are so keen, and I just. This group that we went with, I gained such a great respect for who they were and the stories that are part of their culture, and just the vastness of the desert. And the camels, the lovely camels. I bonded with my camel the first trip. His name was Anarani, who is a character in my book. And I bonded with him in such a beautiful way. And so all of these things fed this bubble of this story that sort of, came to me and started coming in little vignettes. And I started capturing them by writing them down. But the other piece was, as much as I had, these were not long experiences. It was, the first vision quest was 2 weeks in the Sahara, and the second one was 3 weeks. And they were in the month of January. So of course it was, the temperature was not, prohibitive. But I didn't want to just write of it. I wanted to make it the story that also let people understand this culture of the Tuareg. So one of the reasons why it took me about 8 years to write this, because I read profusely and, looked at anthropology journals and, articles about them. And so I was really trying to get even a deeper feeling of this culture and their history, past as well as their current history. And that's where I base my book in the idea that they've gone through and this one is based on a 1990 rebellion uprising because of so much of the oppressiveness that's going on, not just by the French that had been there, but, forcing people who are nomadic to sit in one place. You have to, it's killing a culture, you're not, it's something that is inherent for thousands of years for them to have been in this rhythm. Their rhythm of the desert is to be moving, and it's really having ill effect. And you get youth now who are, they're wandering around, but it's almost like a homeless wandering around, not feeling connected, roaming around. So there's that piece that I wanted to sort of bring this culture that not too many people know about to greater awareness. So that's one of the things that I really wanted to do with this, and that not a lot of people usually plan on going to the Sahara Desert for their vacation. And the Sahara, to me, somehow became, when I went there, felt almost familiar. I couldn't quite understand why something felt so foreign, felt so familiar, and why it drew me back a second time. That puzzled me too. So this, as large as it is, there was still something, it's earthly, it's part of our world. And so I wanted to convey that sense of that desert, as well as that those things that I've, sort of experienced on a ethereal and soulful level, that there's some things that are non-explicable in life. And I believe in everything and I believe in nothing. It's keeping it an open, just openness to how can we operate and find ways to deal with what we have to operate in life.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, I love, I'd never heard of the actual name of the nomadic culture. I mean, kind of vaguely familiar, from things that you learn in elementary school, that kind of thing. But, and then just, I think you did a really good job of weaving it all kind of together. And, you being a researcher and kind of going down the path of maybe an anthropologist. So it all kind of makes sense. Like early in your life, you were a student of culture and history. And so it's all kind of like coming, fast forward to bringing it all together. And then I know that you've also gotten certified to be a life coach, and that you have clients that you coach. And so, and I know that one of the things that you had on your business card that I thought was really interesting was create a path of radical non-interference with your life. So talk a little bit about that, because I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I think one of each one of us is our own worst enemy. We are very good at sabotaging our own selves, and a really important way, or the key way that we do that, let's put it back to the fact that I always say that we have a cadre of voices in our head. There are, one of the things that people have a hard time with meditating is, well, all I keep hearing, all this stuff is going on in my head, that monkey chatter. And I'm trained in a technique called voice dialogue, and that is it's really opened me, and also helps me to open my clients to how do you build your awareness of all those. They all have kind of a role. So for instance, let's talk about if somebody has a people-pleasing voice, they give way to, they just kind of, let go of their own identity just so they don't create conflict, just so everybody can get along. I don't want to stir the thing, right? So that's one of, ton of different voices that we can have. So for instance, if I'm working with somebody I hear them talking about, I kind of lost myself in that interaction. I didn't really know what to do. And so I just let it go. So we say, tell me a little bit more about that voice. And as one of the things that you do with this voice dialogue is I get to sort of shift them from being the person who's holding that along with all the other voices to just having that person talk only in their people-pleasing voice. So you can actually separate. It's almost, I mean, I always say I think we're all humans are schizophrenic. Not everybody's diagnosable, but we are all, subject to those many, many voices in our brain. So I can actually have that dialogue with a person who is only speaking really from that people-pleasing voice. And they're talking about it as themselves in third person.
Right.
So that's kind of a very striking way of doing it. And it goes from that to just talking with people. As you talk with people in that awareness, as you help them to become more aware of, then those voices are not, I always say we just default. It's just a constant defaulting back to those voices. And they're very, very long term because they came usually as protective interactions when we were children. How do we protect ourselves? So they're very protective and they don't want to lose their grip. And you don't ever want to get rid of any of those voices because they are very important parts of you. But you have to get a little more in relationship with them, give them gratitude. Thank you for getting me as far as I have. You helped me survive. You helped me to get through difficult times. But now there's usually an equal opposite voice. That primary voice usually has an equal and opposite disowned voice. Bring that. Let's listen to that one a little bit more. How can I now be an aware ego that's more in charge of, rather than those voices just washing away? So that's that how do you radically, clear the path so that it's not just all these other things getting at you and giving you the direction rather than you utilizing the wisdom of those voices so that you're now more in control of your choices. Right. That's kind of the idea of that, getting, kind of radically out of your own way.
Yeah, I've never heard the voice dialogue techniques. That's interesting. I've heard of, the inner critic and giving them a new job, and and
that's exactly there's multiple ways of saying those things. The other way I learned in vision questing is talking about them as the loyal soldiers. Those loyal soldiers that, here I come to save the day, and I'm just not going to stop being that way. Well, now it's not serving me. It served me as a child, right, in that context. But now as an adult, that's just, it's just sabotaging, Right. So that loyal soldier has to sort of give its due regard and its thanks and how you do. Let's dial it down a little, Right. I'm not getting rid of you, just dialing you down. That's one of the techniques, is how do you dial, where is that on a dial of 1 to 100? Oh, it's up, it's like 80%. Oh, that's not going to. So then you visualize turning that voice down. Oh, maybe 30%. That way it's not gone, but it's not, prominently taking you over.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love your analogy. I like process, right? And so I like your 3 steps as part of the vision quest, where you do the severance and the separation, and then you get sacred and you're with nature and you're sitting with yourself, because so many of us don't want to do that. Right. I like the thing that you talked about, like you're kind of crossing that threshold of like, who am I? And you're shifting and you're raising your awareness, and then you're incorporating those gifts and coming back out of it, sharing your deeper wisdom. So I love the way that you explain sort of how a vision quest can kind of flow, so that if any of our listeners do choose to go on a vision quest, they kind of know what to expect, right, in terms of process. But the other thing that you mentioned to me was, so your website's lisadmccall.com, and you talked about Explore the Dark Heart. So talk to me about Explore the Dark Heart and what that is, because I'm fascinated by that as well. Yeah.
So on a sort of psych kind of side of it, we have shadow sides. We have, yes, in the Jungian concept of shadow, those parts that we're not, again, sort of like the voices. We don't really know. They're not as aware. They're doing things that are, creating, harsh kind of conditions or connections, or, oh, there's that pattern again. Oh my God, why do I keep doing that over and over again? So that shadow part, I created this, this image of, I kind of have a card that shows you, it's a heart, but it's a little dark, and it has these sort of weird wings. And I just was being creative. And that's one of the things I feel like doing shadow work, going into that dark side that we tend to fear, is really where the creativity, and you can lighten your life by doing that. So I call this the dark heart. And so I have sort of a line of images that are on T-shirts and bags and things like that, and little keychains. And so, but I found this creative outlet, or is this image of it, and now it's kind of defining where I'm going and defining more about my coaching and workshops that I'm doing. I call them the Dark Heart Creative Workshops, so that it is helping people be and I do it with a lot of creativity, with a lot of lightness, but at the same time, helping people to sort of dare go to that place that they're not to, because most people say, oh, I'm not an artist. I don't have any artistic. Yes, you do. Everybody has creativity. Everybody has a way of expressing themselves that's artistic and speaks to that inner creative genius. So that's where I'm going now with Explore the Dark Heart. It's exploring those places that are like, trying to get a radical non-interference, so that you can be the more creativity you have in your life, the greater range that you have in handling problems, or, kind of, loosening the grip of things that, make you feel like you're not good enough, or not, not able to disengage from all the distractions of your mind. So just lightening those things by going into the shadows. Right, because it's easier to kind of push it away and not go there. Exactly. But I agree with you. I think if we're fully expressed, and we are all creative beings, and we tap into that dark heart, or that dark side, or the shadow side, or whatever, and acknowledge it for what it is, sometimes that can be your greatest power and strength. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I love your book. I love what you're doing out in the world, both in the public health sector, as well as with, your coaching and your writing and your workshops and your creativity. And, so my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today? Well, and I was thinking about that, and it didn't seem brave, but when you talk with people, that it's probably not the most common choice, or something that most people would really walk into doing, and that is to go off and sit by myself, especially in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Right. And it's like, well, no, that's what I do. But then all of a sudden I'm like, that's not a lot of choice. That's not a lot of things. That's not what a lot of people would choose to do. That's just not where they would go, especially to be there in people. Sometimes people say, well, aren't there like snakes, or aren't there bugs, or and I'm not. Luckily, with my biology background, I love nature. I've learned all about how nature operates, so nature doesn't scare me on that level. So it helps me to not feel like it's brave, but I think it really. It's not an easy thing. Think about how many people have a hard time just sitting in their own space and meditating. And they don't want to do it because all of that starts bubbling up. And, it's like the crowd just makes you feel like you got to get out of here and distract, so I don't have to hear that crowd. And to sit just with yourself and just be there is probably a fairly brave thing to do. And obviously has brought a lot of richness in my life by my interactions with people. It's informed me to become a coach. It's informed my book. It's informed that knowledge of the shadow, and by being in an inner city Baltimore, working with some really, really, wounded individuals, and really relate with them. Have I gone where they've gone in their life? No, but I've gone where I've gone in the adversity of my life. That's equal. It creates equal ground. We are all human. Is it okay if I read a quick? I love this poem.
Yes.
It's by Hafez.
Okay.
And it's called and I think that speaks to this idea that there's we're all equal in this way of being human. It's called With That Moon Language. Admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, love me. Of course, you do not do this out loud. Otherwise, someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other eye in this world is dying to hear? We all want to be seen, felt, and heard. And if we keep that's what I love doing in my interactions with the participants of my study. They're not usually seen, felt, and heard. Their lives have not had very much of that. And even if you're doing it in a few minutes, if you can see, feel, and hear another and just allow them to speak their story, it gives them a sense of validation and that they're human and somebody's sharing in that humanness that we all carry. And we all want to be loved. It's just, we're social creatures. We require that.
Yeah.
So
yes. Amen. Yes. I totally agree. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time today to be on the show and to share your wisdom, to talk about vision questing, to talk about your book, The Rhythm of the Soul. I think I can't wait to finish it. I'm like, it's really, really good. And I like your term magical realism. I'd never heard that, but that's really a good way to describe it. And, thank you for taking the time to do all the research on these nomads in the Sahara Desert, because a lot of people probably don't know their story or don't know what they've been through and what they continue to go through. So thank you so much. We will make sure that we put all your information in the show notes so people can find you online. They can buy your book. Your book is on Amazon.
I was just going to say Amazon. I was going to say, people know that they can get my book.
Yep. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can go and buy your book on Amazon and learn more about vision questing in this particular culture. And again, thank you so much. I really am so grateful that we met.
Yeah, me too. That's one of those things I say, if I hadn't written my book, so this is encouragement for anybody out there. If you don't do something that's calling you, that's niggling at you to do something, it may not be the most famous thing that you won't be. That's not the point. But the path that I've gotten by just daring to write it and daring to publish it, I get to do things I would never have done before. I get to learn things I would never have learned. So just stay open. Just really let yourself be in that passion of your life and that rhythm of your soul. And you get to meet people like this. This is fabulous. So thank you. Very honored.
Exactly.
Our paths crossed. So.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. And I wish you the best of luck in all of your future endeavors.
Thank you. And I look forward to hearing your podcasts. I'm going to make sure I get into them so I can find out about other brave girls out there.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Tracy.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.